Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Wasatch Report. I'm Suzanne Sherman, and you are listening to the Cerberus Radio Network, defending freedom and liberty from the flames of tyranny. It is December 15th, year of our Lord 2017. Happy Bill of Rights Day. I'm going to be addressing that later on in the show. We're going to start off today with a special guest. His name's Brian Duff from Mind of Survival. And I want to encourage you to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Cerberus Radio Network. We have a fan page as well that's having some lively discussions there, facebook.com/CRN fan page. You can also follow me and send me messages as we go along. I check them when we're live on the air. Is facebook.com/Cowgirl Esquire. And we have an app you can download for the Android platform. And while you're there, you can check out our blogs. I have one, Cowgirl Esquire blog on WordPress. Also, we have Mike Meharry from the 10th Amendment. His podcasts are also available that you can hear on our app, as well as his podcast with Peter Schiff from Schiff Gold, if you're interested in learning about investing in gold to be prepared for what I believe will be a collapse of our fiat currency, our system of fiat currency. Everybody's ranting and raving how wonderful it is that our stock market is soaring right now. And I like to compare that. I used to work at the racetrack in Hollywood Park in Santa Anita when I lived in Southern California. And I'd see all these people with their racing forms looking at the statistics, trying to figure out which horses to bet on. But what they didn't realize was the rampant cheating that was going on the backside of the track, horses being drugged, jockeys picking who was going to win, the trainers and what they did to really make the forms that these people were relying on absolutely meaningless. And the stock market and how it's being propped up artificially, to me, is very similar. We do have a number. When my guest is done, you'll be able to call in 717-467-1736. And I'm going to be discussing, after he's gone, I will address a comment that was made regarding my immigration, the constitutional solution to immigration, a concern that the government does, a comment that the government does have the power to regulate immigration. So I will address that comment, and we will also be discussing the Bill of Rights, and I'll be playing a video for you. You can hear, obviously, the audio for that after our first break. And Jeff, is Brian available on the phone?
Yes, he is. He's on.
All right, I want to welcome Brian Duff from Mind for Survival. Mind, number 4 for survival. Brian, we kind of met following each other on Twitter and Facebook, and we've become friends. I really enjoy your post. Why don't you tell people what you're really doing, a little bit of your background, and then we'll get right into it. Okay, is Brian available to talk? All right, Jeff, should we just go on to something else and then we'll see if Brian can get back on, or are we having an issue here? I seem to have lost everybody now. Well, I'm just going to go on and tell everybody a little bit about what I did last night. Last night, I went with my boys down to Salt Lake City and visited Temple Square.
Should be on, Susan. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
Brian should be on, unless we lost him on the phone.
I'm not hearing him. Okay, let me ask him. I'll send him a message.
I don't know.
Yes, can you hear me, Brian?
Hello?
Can you hear me? Okay, Jeff, I don't know if he can hear me or not. Okay, he says he can hear me. Brian, why don't you...
I can hear you.
Okay, fantastic. Hey, Brian, after all of this, welcome to the Wasatch Report.
How you doing?
Okay, Brian, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
is Android. I appreciate being here. Thanks for inviting me, and I'm really happy to be here today. I'm a former firefighter, paramedic, Army Ranger, and then overseas security specialist. I spent about 20 years as a certified paramedic in the 75th Ranger Regiment, and then I spent probably about 10 or 11 years overseas working in places like Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Africa.
Brian, are you on a cell phone or speakerphone?
I'm on my cell phone.
The connection's really bad. Jeff, why don't we just do this and we can get a better connection? I can barely hear a word he's saying.
Better?
No.
Hold on a second.
What was that, Jeff?
Go ahead, Brian. Say something again.
Is this better?
Yeah, that's a little bit.
It's still pretty. It's a little bit better.
Do you have a landline? Is there a landline you can use? Jeff, I don't think this is going to work.
All right. We'll try to get back with you again, Brian, and do this again another time. All right. We'll try to work out a better connection. We'll try to get you into Hangouts with this if you have a computer available. Okay. And it'll be much clearer. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Jeff. Well, that's disappointing. But anyway, I do want to ask people to go check out Brian's website, and that is mindforsurvival.com. I did post that yesterday. We will get him back on the air another time because it is very worth the effort. And he was an Army Ranger, and he talks about the survival mindset. One thing that he does talk about frequently was that it is very important to try and improve yourself every day on a daily basis. And if you go there, you'll see people are asked, what do you do? And Jeff, one of the things I posted yesterday on social media, and then I'll get back to what we did last night, and I want to hear about your activities as well, is every day, is there something you can do to make yourself better physically, mentally, stronger, to improve not only just your everyday life quality, but your chances for dealing with the survival situation, short-term or even long-term? And Jeff, while I was going over thinking about stuff like this, at one point, I remembered, I think I was maybe 19 years old, and I went through my vehicle broke down. I was in the middle of nowhere out in Central California coming back from the Delta. Jeff, I didn't handle it very well. I absolutely panicked. I had absolutely no water, no survival. This was before we even had cell phones. And fortunately, there was a phone booth nearby, and I was able to get to it. But I realize now, knowing what I know, that I would handle this situation completely differently, even if I didn't have a telephone available, and I would have been a lot calmer. And I also posted yesterday something, Live Fit and Free with Erin. That's a good friend of mine who is out here, who has what I like to refer to as a cottage industry, which has given her freedom to spend time with her kids and have more quality with them rather than going to work every day outside of the home. She's able to coach people online. Check out her page, Live Fit and Free with Erin, on getting people healthy, getting people in good shape, getting them eating properly. And one of the pictures that she had shared today was, exercise isn't punishment for something you ate, but it's a celebration of what your body can do. Now, Jeff, last night I took the boys over to Temple Square, and we enjoyed the Christmas lighting. I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of Temple Square at night. It is absolutely gorgeous. And I'm going to go back next week and take a lot of photographs so I can share that with people. And apparently you went to see a movie that I didn't know was out until I saw posts on Facebook last night.
Yes, I did. I went and saw the early edition of Star Wars, The Last Jedi.
Ah.
So, and on our friend's show, he had his normal movie reviewer, and she wasn't very kind. I liked it far better than she portrayed it as. I thought it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I'm not going to give any spoilers.
I have to say, I saw that movie when I was, I think, in junior high school, and I had no idea what it was about then, and I still don't to this day. But Jeff, I wanted to get to a comment that I received. I had posted this. I believe you saw it in a private group that we were in, the constitutional solution to immigration. And the first comment, and Jeff, gosh darn it, we hear this all the time, that you can construe pretty much a few of these clauses, we call them the good and plenty clauses or the elastic clauses, to say that Congress has the authority to do pretty much whatever it pleases. And the comment here was, part of the problem with this is Congress has the proper authority to regulate immigration. In no sane way can Congress properly regulate naturalization if it can't regulate who comes and goes. That's why we have the necessary and proper clause. It is necessary and proper for Congress to regulate immigration properly so as to properly regulate naturalization policy. Not to mention federal immigration laws stretch all the way back to John Adams' administration, and they've hardly been construed as unconstitutional. And I'm having a problem making the connection that he seems to have between immigration and naturalization. Just because you allow somebody, if you're a sovereign state, to come within your territorial borders, does not mean that Congress has the authority to regulate, because of their power to come up with a uniform rule of naturalization, to expand that to concern immigration. Plus, immigration, again, was addressed as Congress not being allowed to affect the importation of slaves up until 1808, but in no way did that say that after 1808 they had any authority to regulate immigration whatsoever. So this is, again, an implied powers argument. I believe it was John Taylor of Caroline that said a constitution or rule of law by implication is the same as no written or rule of law whatsoever. This takes us back to parliamentary sovereignty, which is what we fought a war to escape. So again, if you think that it is necessary and proper that Congress regulate immigration because they have a stated authority to regulate by a uniform rule of naturalization, then you're going under the misconception that Alexander Hamilton bought into, that you have an implied power to create national banks, which was a hotly contested issue, and now we've gotten that way anyway. So kind of what happens, and also going back to John Adams, just because it goes back a long way doesn't mean the act was constitutional. Look at the Alien and Sedition Acts. So necessary and proper, what I did do, and I'm going to post them today, the 10th Amendment Center has several articles on there, but there is one that Mike Meharry also had written, and he says that the necessary and proper clause is also called the elastic clause. Necessary and proper simply states that Congress has the power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or office thereof. So the word foregoing. Also, the supremacy clause is always listed. That's another elastic clause. And again, the phrase that really controls this subject is in pursuance thereof. So what these talk about is the execution of the foregoing, the pursuance thereof, the enumerated powers. It doesn't mean that they can just do whatever you like. Mike Meharry quotes Alexander Hamilton in Federalist 33, where he asserted that the necessary and proper clause, along with the supremacy clause, merely stated a truism and gave no additional power to the federal government. Quoting Hamilton, it may be affirmed with perfect confidence that the constitutional operation of the intended government would be precisely the same if these clauses were merely obliterated as if they repeated in every article. They are only one declaratory of a truth which would have resulted by necessary and unavoidable implication from from the very act of constituting a federal government and vesting it with certain specified powers. So again, they were only given specific powers. The powers that were necessary and proper were only in accordance to execute the foregoing, those which were specifically enumerated, delegated by the states. Those which were not delegated to the general government remained where, Jeff?
With the states or the people.
Yeah, I don't understand why this is so difficult for people to really grasp. Also, this article has a quote of George Nicholas during the Virginia ratifying convention. Now, remember, if you listened yesterday, I discussed when I was an undergrad at UCLA in my Supreme Court classes that the professor gave us two means by which we can understand the Constitution or interpret what was meant, and that was either by the plain text, which, as I explained, gives you the opportunity to misunderstand, say, the Second Amendment shall not be infringed. When I try to discuss national reciprocity and how it's a disaster because it is a power that was intended to be left to the states, regulation of firearms, people say, well, what part of shall not be infringed do you not understand? That is an example of the plain text understanding of the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. What that does is open the door to a misinterpretation, and I've heard Kevin Gutzman describe it as the lazy man's approach to understanding the Constitution. You have to dig deeper. The other option, the other means by which we can interpret the Constitution is what we call it as a living, breathing document. And they've gone now, as I mentioned, from simply interpreting, like we had the New Deal judges interpreting this when they incorporated, for instance, the Bill of Rights against the states, to now disparaging the founding generation altogether, as I heard in Kansas City from a law school professor, as the founding and the framers were a generation of slave-owning, racist, and misogynists and homophobics. So now they've gone from saying it's a living, breathing document to, well, this is old and we should just disparage this generation altogether, because really what they say should not apply to our modern day social justice standards. So what do we end up with? A Constitution that really has no meaning at all, and they can do whatever they want. Let me just quickly quote George Nicholas, and then we'll move on. Suppose it had been inserted at the end of every power that they should have the power to make laws necessary to carry that power into execution. Would this have increased their powers? It therefore could not have increased their powers. If it placed at the very end of each power, it cannot increase them at the end of all of them. The clause only enables them to carry into execution the powers given them, but gives them no additional power. So what exactly does necessary and proper mean? That, and now I'm going to quote our good friend Mike Meharry, legal documents delegating power commonly contain a necessary and proper clause, and it has a precise, specific definition that is well understood in the founding area. Basically, it allows an agent to exercise powers not explicitly spelled out in the legal document, but necessary to exercise the specific authority given to him. So is that clear enough, Jeff? Do you think we answered that sufficiently?
I think so. I'm just going to play the person and listening, because was he? I'm trying to think. Mike Meharry saying that basically they have some latitude in how they implement the delegated power, but it's only in that delegated power. They can't. Okay, so so they don't have the latitude just to add healthcare to it, or the EPA, or whatever it is. Am I understanding what Mike Meharry was saying about the delegated powers?
I would think adding healthcare and the EPA, that goes under what they call either Commerce Clause arguments, or also general welfare clauses as well. It doesn't add any authority already delegated to Congress. It doesn't allow for the creation of new powers. It simply reaffirms that the federal government possesses the flexibility to exercise the powers already delegated. So it was not a necessary and proper power to, for instance, create a national bank when the general government was given the specific and exclusive power to have to create coin currency. So it is also, let me think of another example. With regards to immigration, they don't have that power, but with regards to naturalization, Congress can come up with, say, the specific set of guidelines that they can send to the states that tells them how these potential citizens can become naturalized. They can tell them that. They can set up a bureau, an agency of naturalization, but not one of immigration. So I hope that clarifies things a little bit. What we're going to do is reset the table. After this break, we're going to talk about Bill of Rights Day. Apparently it's Bill of Rights Day, and I came across a video that was posted in a group of constitutionalists that takes the Bill of Rights, its intentions, and again turns it into something completely on its head. And I think, Jeff, will you be able to play that video so people can hear what they're saying?
If no other technology disasters happen, it should play.
Okay, yeah, this hasn't quite been our morning, but you know what? We're going to power through and we're going to get this done because we have some things that need to be said. We'll be back after this break. This is the Wasatch Report on the Cerberus Radio Network, defending freedom and liberty from the flames of tyranny. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Wasatch Report. I'm Suzanne Sherman, and you are listening to the Cerberus Radio Network, defending freedom and liberty from the flames of tyranny. It is December 15th, year of our Lord 2017. Happy Bill of Rights Day. I'm going to be addressing that later on in the show. We're going to start off today with a special guest. His name's Brian Duff from Mind of Survival. And I want to encourage you to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Cerberus Radio Network. We have a fan page as well that's having some lively discussions there, facebook.com/CRN fan page. You can also follow me and send me messages as we go along. I check them when we're live on the air, is facebook.com/Cowgirl Esquire. And we have an app you can download for the Android platform. And while you're there, you can check out our blogs. I have one, Cowgirl Esquire blog on WordPress. Also, we have Mike Meharry from the 10th Amendment. His podcasts are also available that you can hear on our app, as well as his podcast with Peter Schiff from Schiff Gold, if you're interested in learning about investing in gold to be prepared for what I believe will be a collapse of our fiat currency, our system of fiat currency. Everybody's ranting and raving how wonderful it is that our stock market is soaring right now. And I like to compare that. I used to work at the racetrack in Hollywood Park in Santa Anita when I lived in Southern California. And I'd see all these people with their racing forms looking at the statistics, trying to figure out which horses to bet on. But what they didn't realize was the rampant cheating that was going on the backside of the track, horses being drugged, jockeys picking who was going to win, the trainers and what they did to really make the forms that these people were relying on absolutely meaningless. And the stock market and how it's being propped up artificially, to me, is very similar. We do have a number. When my guest is done, you'll be able to call in 717-467-17. Welcome back, everybody, to the Wasatch Report. Suzanne Sherman here with Jeff Johnson in the studio. Jeff, thank you for helping me produce the show today. Really appreciate it. You're listening to the Cerberus Radio Network, defending freedom and liberty from the flames of tyranny. In the first segment of the show, we were discussing the necessary and proper clause as I was responding to a comment on my recently published Immigration: A Constitutional Solution to Immigration that the 10th Amendment Center was kind enough to publish for me. And I want you to go to my webpage, facebook.com/Cowgirl Esquire. You can also find it on our radio page, facebook.com/Cerberus Radio Network. One of the other co-founders of the network, Daniel Bailey, asked if we were going to cover net neutrality at all. And my response was, no, not really. But I guess I'll address it. Yesterday, I believe, was it yesterday, Jeff, that the Trump administration reversed the Obama administration's FCC policy to regulate the internet?
Yes, yesterday the FCC ended net neutrality. And I don't know if you remember back when it started under Obama, everyone lost their mind. The world was coming to the end because of net neutrality. And in reality, having the government have that much power over the internet is really, I don't think, was a good thing anyway. But now you have everyone losing their mind that the world's coming to the end because they're doing away with net neutrality. I just don't get it. Nothing makes any sense anymore. Up is down and down is sideways. I don't know. I don't get it.
Well, I wish we could blame the abandonment of net neutrality on our technical issues this morning, but unfortunately we can't. Everything still seems to be working just fine. I remember back when Obama proposed regulating the internet, and I believe what he had said, that he didn't have the constitutional authority to do so. So, and he was trying to get Congress to go with this, and Congress wasn't. And like he did on so many other occasions, he just didn't run around Congress and just had his FCC, Federal Communications Commission, declare by fiat that the internet was now a telecommunications device. Therefore, now we have the authority that we just gave ourselves, damned be the Constitution, to regulate the internet. And it's going to be wonderful, because playing along there, we hate corporations. The greedy corporations are going to ruin life for everybody. Therefore, we're going to step in and save society from capitalism. We're going to now regulate the internet, and it's going to be much better. I couldn't tell the difference before. Can't tell the difference now. I've heard arguments that it was a good thing. I'm a purist when it comes to this stuff. I always believe that the government should respect its constitutional restraints, and I will always take the side that free markets should govern what happens. The other thing I don't like, this is success and failure of certain companies and policies. So if you don't like how your ISP is treating you, then find another one or go without for a while. But people need to make a stand and not just assume that the government's going to take care of this, because I have yet to see something that they've done right or that they have made better. So I just don't understand why there is a big hullabaloo about something the government should have been doing in the first place. And so that's really my only commentary on that. I'm a purist when it comes to this stuff. They should not be regulating it. The government shouldn't even have. There should be no FCC, period. As I've said time and time again, we are kept misinformed, uneducated. The truth is kept from us from what I always call the trifecta of evil. That's the education system, the politicians, the government, and the entertainment industry, the media. And what we have is the government with its licensing arrangements and their involvement in the education system controlling the latter when they have absolutely no authority to do so. So I'm going to address the Bill of Rights in a moment.
Suzanne, I just want to, this morning there was a post by a mutual friend of ours about uniting under the conservatives need to unite under the GOP after the loss in
that was a good
Alabama.
One. Yes.
Yes, it was a really good one. And my comment was, well, the problem is they're all Marxist. And you know what? We live on, our system of government is no less a command and control, top-down, Soviet-style government than the USSR was or Venezuela is. we do not live under a republic, a representative republic. There is only political theater to make you think that you have some sort of input into the amount of tyranny they heap on us. That was my comment.
Yes.
And
yes.
and it's true. I mean, the fact of the matter is that with net neutrality, if you put the government in, it's just them trying to control the content of the internet. It's no different than with the Department of Education. They're controlling the content of education. Or you name your ABC, whatever they are, government agency, and they're just controlling from Washington, D.C., all 320 million of us.
Exactly. And for people think that our Republican Party is so wonderful, Nixon, I believe, was the one that gave us Medicare. He also took us off the gold standard for good. Part D Medicare, which I've heard has been a disaster for people. We can thank George W. Bush for that. But I'm going to actually read this post because I saw this morning, and I will attribute it to my good friend Carl Jones, who is the co-author of The National Reciprocity is a Trojan Horse, also published by the 10th Amendment Center. He did a fantastic job on that. I really appreciate his contributions. But here's what he says, and here's the post that you were referring to. And here's Carl. People calling on conservatives to unite with the Republican Party in the wake of Jones' victory clearly have not identified the problem. As we like to say, Jeff, they are still plugged into the matrix. Anyone who thinks that the GOP is not every bit as responsible as Democrats for the growth of government, centralization of power, usurping of undelegated authority, destruction of constitutional limitations, and marginalization of the voice of the people of the states is very simply not paying attention. The Republican Party was the party that started the entire process of dismantling the Constitution in the 1800s. Wonder what he's referring to. This is a demonstrable fact. Had Mo Brooks been the nominee, he'd have won in a landslide. He wasn't the nominee because your beloved GOP establishment unleashed every dog in their arsenal to have him out of the race and to put Swamp Deller Luther Strange in office. In doing so, they funded and carried out one of the most viciously dishonest campaigns I've ever witnessed. I'll unite with these people when hell freezes over. I agree with every single word he says. Mitch McConnell needs to understand this is not his Senate. This is the problem with nationalization. This is the problem.
I just want to comment on that because another post by another friend was chiding Judge Roy Moore as being a terrible candidate and ran a terrible campaign. Just as this other gentleman that Carl was talking about, Roy Moore never ran a campaign because he couldn't run a campaign.
Right.
He trying to dispel all the lies the media is putting out. They've never proven anything. It was all accusations, and they've proven most everything about those accusations to be false. Yet, the only thing that was discussed about Roy Moore were these accusations. So we end up with the powers that be deciding who is getting elected. And you can blame the GOP for Roy Moore not being a senator. It was on them. They did it.
Absolutely. And thanks to the 17th Amendment, every senatorial seat is a matter of national significance. This is a matter of life and death, and people are only happy. I mean, you see, this social media was completely hijacked by what was going on in Alabama. Now, the point of the Senate was to be a vanguard of the rights in the states in the new general government. But now everybody we might as well just erase the state borders. The states are merely subsidiary to the whole at this point. In fact, it's interesting. When I was taught about the Bill of Rights, do you know how the 10th Amendment was described to me, Jeff? It was called, it was the Police Powers Clause, the Police Powers Amendment. So the way we were taught it implied that, yeah, the states, of course, had their own police systems or police departments because they could regulate their own local laws. And it's almost like they got the scraps of what the general government did not have, when the absolute inversion of that idea is what the truth is. Let me share with you how, we're probably just going to blow through the break here, how indoctrinated the people are. There's a page out here I follow. It's called Utah Policy. And this is how much people, and it's just a pure leftist drivel, but it's their attempt to talk about what's going on out here. Again, very leftist standpoint. And the article here is our governor Herbert unveils a $16.7 billion budget proposal, includes a $200 million boost for public education. One of the factors contributing to my decision to move here was, at the time I was doing my research on where to move, Utah was fiscally the number 4 in this union for fiscal responsibility. One of the top, it was the top 4. It was the 4th. So I thought, this is really good, because I, having lived in California, really wanted to get away from this. So he's proposing a $200 million public education funding boost in the budget. Where does that come from? Our pockets. So the responses here, when we're saying, when I chime in also, people are saying, oh, this is really something that is a benefit, because educated people, educated students benefit everybody. We have this progressive mentality that somehow, notwithstanding what we have seen with the mentality of these millennials that are projects and products of the education system, we somehow think that more money and more of the same somehow benefits us. So government wants more money to turn out what? More drones that support big government. At what point, when will we be able to say enough of this? And what does the government do on top of that? They have compulsory education laws. So now it's illegal not to send your children to school. If you want to homeschool them, the law in Utah at the time was you had to teach the exact same subjects for the same amount of hours. Now what he did was lax up on teaching the same amount of hours, because obviously you don't have to if your kids aren't there all day, because really that's just to make sure that the teachers and the administrative staff have what? Full-time jobs. So again, people are just saying that this is absolutely necessary to keep our children educated. I think they are miseducated. And the other thing is, I've talked about with homeschooling, is the biggest mistake. Connor Boyack, who also has written the Tuttle Twins series of books, which are touted, by the way, by no other than Tom Woods and Ron Paul, as saying the biggest mistake you can make is doing at home what they do at school. Your kids will be equally miserable. And I tried that. When I first started homeschooling my kids, Jeff, I did a public school homeschool curriculum, and they absolutely hated it. So we ended up doing our own thing, and we ended up doing it in Utah. Fortunately, nobody ever challenged me on it and wanted to see what we were, doing, check our transcripts or anything like that. Again, I feel that that's none of their business. Did you want to take a quick break and set up that clip that we found, or do you want to go through?
Let's just keep going. I only set up one break because normally we only take one, so I don't even have a second one set up. Let's just keep going.
And then we will just forge on through. Once again, this is the Wasatch Report. I'm Suzanne Sherman. Jeff Johnson and I are getting through this morning. It's Friday morning. We're trying to add some extra shows to our lineup here, so you have some more live radio options to listen to during the week here on the Cerberus Radio Network, defending freedom and liberty from the flames of tyranny. I came across a video that is celebrating Bill of Rights Day. And I thought, well, this is really cool, because it was in a constitutional group out of Texas. And I thought I'd give it a listen, that we're going to celebrate this. And what I heard really was not what I expected from such a group. So, Jeff, I'm wondering, why don't you just go ahead and play it, and then we will address these. I'll address my points as we go through this, or at the end of it, I'm sorry.
If you had something that you were given, something you loved, something that others wanted so badly but were denied it, something that you used and relied on every single day. If you had something special, something beautiful, something powerful, if you had something absolutely essential to securing your health, happiness, and safety, if you treasured something so much that you were willing to die for that something, if you knew that others already had, and if someone had given you a document that protected that something, wouldn't you take the time to read it?
What do you think of that, Jeff? Oh my goodness. Wouldn't you take the time to read it? Now, that sets up to me the perfect example of the plain text analysis. You can read the plain text of what you see there and assume that that means that this is a right that we have been given by the government. And the Bill of Rights, what do they say? Something, they call the Bill of Rights something that we were given. Were these rights given to us, Jeff? Let me read the preamble to the Bill of Rights that the conventions of a number of states having at the time of their adopting the Constitution expressed a desire in order, this is crucial, to prevent misconstruction or abuse of its powers, that further declaratory and restrictive clauses should be added, and as extending the ground of public confidence in the government will best ensure the beneficent ends of its institution. Jeff, that tells me that this is merely a reiteration of the distrust the states had when they, according to John Taylor of Caroline, as an ultimate act of sovereignty, created the general government. Also, according to John Taylor of Caroline, that they could reassert this ultimate act of sovereignty by dismantling the very government they have created. Let's ask yourselves, what do you think would happen today if the states tried to dismantle this government? What happened once upon a time when some states tried to secede from this government after years and years of oppressive policies? We've seen what can happen. And this is what Carl Jones was referring to when he said it was the Republican Party in the 1880s that destroyed this voluntary compact, this union that these states entered into voluntarily with the understanding that they could leave if the government no longer suited their needs. Now, this is something that harkens back to our Revolutionary era. It was described in the Declaration of Independence, which also was hearkening back to John Locke. We discussed that yesterday. John Locke, who said that our natural rights existed before the government, and just because we have government, that doesn't go away. The proper role of government is to vanguard our liberties. But here we have something by a group of individuals claiming to be constitutionalists and supporters of the Constitution, saying that the Bill of Rights were something that we were given. The Bill of Rights were not given to us as a gift. The founding generation didn't say, the framers didn't say, hey, you know what? Let's give these people in perpetuity in these amendments here the right to free speech, the right to worship, as they see fit, the right to have a free press, the right to peacefully assemble, the right to petition government for grievances, redress of grievances, the rights to keep and bear arms. These were restrictions. The gift that was given were restrictions. They were not rights. And I wouldn't even say that was a gift. It was something intended to constrain this government so we could continue to enjoy these God-given, pre-existing natural rights that had been around before the government. Something we loved, something we rely on every single day. Jeff, you know what I tell people is the Second Amendment shouldn't even be a part of our daily conversation. You want to talk a little bit about history? You want to talk a little bit about our system of government and how it should be restrained? Yeah, then let's talk about the Second Amendment. I love talking about that. I love talking about the Second Amendment. Its ties to the Third Amendment and the militia, the founders, the framers' fear of standing armies, their distrust for standing armies, and everything that standing armies entailed. I believe it was James Madison that said they were a bane to liberty, and we've seen that. We've seen that as true. But they're saying now, the Second Amendment, we're always talking about it because what is Congress, what is Washington, D.C. always doing? 20,000 gun laws and counting. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. National reciprocity. The NRA has made how much money off of this? This is something that should be discussed at the state level and the state level only, at which time we will be discussing what constitution? Our state constitutions. When the general government proposes any regulation of firearms whatsoever, it should be cut off at the knees. Not only is it not granted in Article 1, Section 8, except for the authority to arm the militia, it's reiterated in the Second Amendment that they have zero authority. Why? To maintain our security. Being in the militia was a duty. Having a firearm was a right that was merely recognized in the Second Amendment. Also, the Bill of Rights, we don't rely upon it every day. We shouldn't have to, because the government should be staying out of it. As Brian McClanahan in his episode on the Second Amendment says, state constitutions were often more jealously protective of these rights than the general government would be assumed to be, and that's exactly what we're seeing now. The Bill of Rights is special. It is beautiful. It is powerful. Yeah, it really is, insofar as it restrains the general government. The general government needs to respect that. But again, if they did that, this wouldn't be a part of our everyday lives. The Bill of Rights is essential to our security, our health, our happiness, our safety. Our safety? What has been done to us in light of the argument that they are keeping us safe? The biggest threats to our liberty the sacrifices to our liberty have been under the auspices of keeping us safe. And Jeff, I will tell you, I was guilty of that. When the Patriot Act came out, I thought, well, 9/11 was absolutely horrific. And if this is what it takes to keep something like that from happening again, I can live with that. And I'll admit that here. And what we've seen now is this draconian loss of our privacy, this draconian dismissal of our rights. There was a law now that came out. In Washington, D.C., you cannot protest, you cannot assemble peacefully, redress government for grievances in an area where the targeted officials can see or hear you. Now, if that's not a First Amendment violation, I don't know what is. And that went unchallenged. at the Bundy Ranch on federal property, they set up First Amendment areas where the protesters could be away from where they could actually see what was going on. I just came across an article from somebody that was actually in custody with Cliven Bundy. And it was interesting because this is now being discussed in the trial, that this individual, Cliven Bundy, had said that there were snipers trained on him. And Gloria Navarro, who was a judge in this case, is now realizing that this is coming out to be true. And the prosecution had denied this has ever happened. And now they are finally saying, well, there were overseers who were lying prone with binoculars, watching the people on the Bundy Ranch. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I had a friend, Bill Keebler, who is actually in custody right now, facing federal charges. He is accused, thanks to an FBI confidential informant, of attempting to set off a pipe bomb at a BLM office in Salt Lake City. Bill Keebler had told me, this is independent verification of what Cliven Bundy was saying, that there were snipers trained on them at this time and when they were there. And I said, at any time, did you point your guns at them? And he said, oh, absolutely not. But now what's come out in the Bundy trial is that, yes, they were practicing. They saw the red lasers on their people, and now they're saying that they were practicing. So if you think that we have a Bill of Rights that is being respected, I just don't understand how we can possibly celebrate this. We should be protesting the violation, the continuous violation of our Bill of Rights today, and rather than celebrating it as being something it absolutely is not. Our Bill of Rights does not guarantee our health. Our health care, is this a referral to the government now provided health care? Jeff, I'm really at a loss as to what they're talking about. People have died for this. They have died to have the Bill of Rights upheld. But we're not seeing now it's just out there. We're speaking of it in terms without understanding. They said everybody should read this. Yes, read it, but understand what it really meant. It was never intended to be imposed upon the states, because when it is, we're going to have debacles like the National Reciprocity Act. I think that the Senate's going to pass it, and I think Donald Trump will sign it. So I was really surprised when I heard this. Jeff, do you want to share some of your thoughts on this? Because I know that you were equally surprised by it.
Well, again, this goes back to the video. Let's start at this part of it. Did you catch how worshipful it was? Like a Sunday school class. I felt like I was listening to a little kid praising God about
Church
how
of the
wonderful
national government
his blessings are on his people. But she's not talking about God, capital G. She's talking about God, government. That was the first thing that struck me about that whole thing. And it goes back to your article about that whole the church of government.
Yes.
And that's what we have here. That's the church of government.
Yeah, and going back to that that article that the Yanni Monopolis or Milo Yiannopoulos, the video of somebody kicking somebody out of a chair for not standing for the pledge. And again, this was a veteran that posts this and says, oh, hell yes, this old veteran just witnessed a young man of his own heart. Now, this is a group that's supposed to be a fellowship group for Christian patriots. Classy job, young man. God bless you, and piss on the little snowflake. POS, you dissed. This is a man, and those that share this sentiment, when they go for their candlelight Christmas Eve service, you know where I think they should go worship? They should take their candles, throw away their Bibles, take their candles, and sit on the steps of a federal courthouse. That's where they should go and worship. Don't even bother going to church. If this is how you think people should be treated over a difference of opinion, that's not a Christian way to behave. Somebody also asked me, Well, Suzanne, at what point would you intervene if you saw somebody being disrespectful in word or deed? And my response was, at no point. If somebody was doing something that did not harm me and wasn't hurting anybody else but was being disrespectful, that is their right to do. People have a right to protest our government. And because you say that you fought to protect me and to keep me safe, or you have family that is overseas to keep us safe, in, I guess, Niger, I have rights in Niger, I guess, that somehow I don't have a right to protest the acts of this government. So I tried to refer them to the history of the Pledge of Allegiance, where, again, George Washington, in the article that I posted from the Abbeville Institute, he would have drawn his sword. He would not have put his hand over his heart. One nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's talk about the justice for all. Hillary Clinton, the FBI. Hillary Clinton obviously broke many laws. Obstruction of justice, she lied to the FBI. Others are getting punished for what she's done. She's not getting punished. The standard of the violation of that law was rewritten, so she couldn't be punished. Liberty, try not paying your taxes. Try violating one of these First Amendment laws that says you can't protest where the target audience can see you. So try not having your email read. Try having some privacy. Try not having your phone records, your phone calls, your texts all tracked. So this forced equality that we're also seeing. When we get back next week, Jeff, I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to start going into government by judiciary. That was by Raoul Berger, and that talks about how our federal judiciary has completely usurped our system of government and have taken away our representation and have returned us to this system of parliamentary sovereignty. Those are the people that died for our rights, and we have squandered them. And that's something we really need to talk about, because some people will say, well, Suzanne, you're really not very realistic. We need to work within the parameters of what we have to deal with today. Well, I think it's always important to talk about the way things were intended to be, not just the way they are now, because it's a losing battle. If we just try to work within what we have today, it's only a matter of time before our generations that know the truth are gone. The kids are being indoctrinated. The older veterans who want to stand for liberty are going to eventually die out. And it's just a waiting game. We're going to have enough people brought into this country from our insane immigration policies where, the people that really want liberty, that want freedom, are going to vote for the exact same nonsensical policies that made them want to leave their homeland in the first place. And we're going to end up resembling more of a third world than what once made us very unique and special. So on that note, we're going to wrap up the show, Jeff. I want to thank you for everything you did today.
Oh, you're welcome. It was quite the technological challenge between the phone system. It just was one of those mornings where nothing wanted to start right. It just turned into... It wasn't very fun, but I had a good time doing the show after it got started.
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed, and I hear this on talk radio frequently when I'm in my vehicle, cell phones are fantastic, but when I used to listen to talk radio before cell phones and people actually use landlines to call in, the connections were always solid. You could always hear. And one of the reasons I like to do tests with guests ahead of time, and I really prefer Google Hangouts, is the connectivity is very good. So one of the things I want to do as a favor to my listeners, and I've had this problem on other shows before, where people will call in as guests and not only Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Wasatch Report. I'm Suzanne Sherman, and you are listening to the Cerberus Radio Network, defending freedom and liberty from the flames of tyranny. It is December 15th, year of our Lord 2017. Happy Bill of Rights Day. I'm going to be addressing that later on in the show. We're going to start off today with a special guest. His name's Brian Duff from Mind of Survival. And I want to encourage you to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Cerberus Radio Network. We have a fan page as well that's having some lively discussions there, facebook.com/CRN fan page. You can also follow me and send me messages as we go along. I check them when we're live on the air, is facebook.com/Cowgirl Esquire. And we have an app you can download for the Android platform. And while you're there, you can check out our blogs. I have one, Cowgirl Esquire blog on WordPress. Also, we have Mike Meharry from the 10th Amendment. His podcasts are also available that you can hear on our app, as well as his podcast with Peter Schiff from Schiff Gold, if you're interested in learning about investing in gold to be prepared for what I believe will be a collapse of our fiat currency, our system of fiat currency. Everybody's ran